Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Childhood is destiny. This is what Gustav Jung said. And he not only made great contributions to archetypal psychology, but he was a student of astrology. And child astrology is what we're going to talk about today.
Perfect. So, hi, this is Maria, and we want to welcome you to the Moms I Know. And today I am here with Magali Morales, and we are going to be diving into this amazing realm of psychology, trauma, astrology, and it's going to be a fascinating experience for me, Magali. I'm so excited. So, Magali is a Mexican-Guatemalan counselor, astrologer, healer, mom, and environmental activist who blogs about parenting in the age of climate change. For 15 years, she worked as a trauma-focused therapist, and today she has blended counseling, astrology, and spirit medicine to offer individuals and families tools for healing and thriving. So Magali, I am so excited to have you here with us today, and we're going to just jump right in. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to this stage of blending these experiences together to help people.
Sure. And first, I just say thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here with you, Maria, today. I appreciate it so much. So how did I come to be an astrologer who works with children's birth charts? That is a great question. I had my first astrology reading when I was 24, and I was raised in a very scientific rationalist family. So, we didn't do religion. I mean, my mom was a Quaker, but she's a very liberal, the most liberal of the Christians when it comes to that. And it was, I had always been curious about astrology, but it really blew my mind how much about me, this astrologer who didn't know me, could explain, and to track my changes over time, because he took a really long time. This was like a 7-hour reading. I have no idea how people do that. I only do 2-hour readings, but that was a really a huge turning point in my life. I began studying astrology like the next day. I picked up my first textbook, and I just taught myself for many, many years. Years later, I discovered that I wanted to become a counselor, and I ended up going back to graduate school to get a master's in clinical social work. And by then, I was very interested in the realm of healing trauma. And like many people, it began with my own trauma. So I grew up in a family that had some layers of violence, and mostly it had to do with the fact that my dad is a survivor of the Guatemalan Civil War. But also I experienced sexual violence during my teen years. And so in my own journey of healing, I just wanted to learn as much as I could about this. Fast forward, I finished grad school, get my master's in clinical social work, and I found a wonderful course in astrology with an amazing teacher whose books I had read, Stephen Forrest. And he was going to teach in Mexico, and I wanted to go visit my family in Mexico. So it was this perfect juncture of things. I had enough money, and I could combine the two trips. And I took my first course with him, and then I completed level 1 certification in his School of Evolutionary Astrology. And it was extremely helpful that after I had been self-taught for all those years, I had some confirmation that my skills were solid, and I began doing professional astrology the year that I graduated from my MSW, and that's been, that's 15 years ago. So I've been reading charts all this time.
That's so fascinating, and I find that, our life experiences so often just point us in this direction, and the things that happen for us. I was talking with a friend, and she said, I've shifted from saying, why do these things happen to me, to why do these things happen for me? And so I think so often it's our destiny here is the destiny.
Yes, this is the destiny idea, exactly.
Right, coming in and pointing us in these directions. And so you've taken your own experiences and then turned them into, really helping other people focus on their experiences and their traumas
On their healing. Yes.
Healing.
I see this over and over again when I do astrology. You know, there are wounds that we receive early in our lives that teach us about compassion through pain, and that teach us about power through victimization. But the lesson is not to stay there. The lesson is to heal and to own our own power, to really take it consciously. So absolutely, I think that is true.
And so now the work that you do with families, this is fascinating to me because most often you're reading the child's chart for the parents. Is that, or do you do the entire family? If you can tell us a little bit about how you work so that our listeners get an idea of how they can seek assistance.
Sure. The majority of the charts that I read are for adults, adults who seek services for themselves. But, during my time as a trauma-focused therapist, I worked with families for 15 years. And I sometimes, saw that seeing through the lens of astrology was incredibly helpful in understanding how people are unique. The problem with psychology is that it kind of makes a blank statement about everybody. It's really not very good at determining individual differences, but astrology is great at it. So I developed as a therapist at the same time that I was developing as an astrologer. And I do work with families, and I do child astrology for the parents. So this is a minority of the work that I do, but I really enjoy it tremendously. And I have dreams of creating a special workshop one day for families that has childcare and food and all that good stuff.
Where there are so many people that will come to that. Yes.
I know, right? But the goal would be to explore the parents' life purpose in relation with the children's life purpose. Because this is another thing. This is the spiritual layer of astrology, where you can see not only like what kinds of experiences is this person going to have in this lifetime, what are their gifts, what are their challenges, and what do they need help with, but what is it all for? See, this is my favorite question, Maria. I don't ask why did this happen to me, but what is it for?
Beautiful.
Where is it leading me? So once we see what it's all for, then it's easier to commit to our growth, right? And to see where we fit into the great puzzle of humanity and which are our special gifts. So I love doing child astrology and it is for the parents pretty much. I mean, one of these days, the first children that I did astrology for are going to grow up, are going to be old enough that the parents can share with them the recordings of the readings. But I do it for the parents because the goal is to support them in supporting the children most accurately, and to validate their experience, and to show them that their intuitions about their own children are right. That the things that, or to shed light on the places where they don't understand. Like, where is my child really coming from? They're so different from me. How can I engage with this difference in a productive way? Right? Because you can see there's a whole array of things that can happen, Maria. Some children are very, have similar vibrations to their parents, and they understand each other very well, and they're very compatible. And some children are vastly different from the parents, and then, life becomes quite challenging. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And I get that question a lot from mamas who are struggling with a child's behavior that is that they don't understand or is so different. And I always talk about coming from, looking at things through the child's eyes, but we don't always understand exactly how that child is seeing something. And in a conversation that I had with you earlier, you said that you can help the parents understand that this is where they're going to need you the most. And I loved that statement that you made, because then you're assisting the parent in understanding this is who this individual is. And these are their strengths and gifts and challenges. And then it helps us as the parents come from a different place instead of a struggle, but a place of compassion and openness. And I think that this is the area, when we're looking at healthy families, if we as the adults can do our inner child work, and so this is where you're working with the parents and helping them do the healing that they need to do. And then we, bring these children into the world, or these children come to us, however you look at that. And they've chosen us for a reason, or this, this family dynamic is here because of what we are supposed to learn, or the path, the destiny that we have. And so then we can have that greater understanding. So I love this. I'd love to hear you, go into that a little bit more in terms of then how can you help the parents understand a little bit more about their child through this reading?
Sure. So the 12 signs of astrology, which correlate with some constellations in the sky, not all of them, but, just the ones that are in the pathway of the sun and the moon, called the ecliptic. Those are basically combinations of different types of intelligences. So the 12 signs of the zodiac are a combination of the 4 elements and 3 modes. These elements and modes are forms of intelligence. So for example, water is emotional intelligence. It's the intelligence of people who feel their way through their decisions and through life. Air is mental and intellectual, kind of logical, language-oriented intelligence. And that is the intelligence of people who enjoy dialogue and are very friendly and, talkative, and mostly of the people who thrive in places like school. When we do astrology, we can understand why school doesn't work for everybody, because it's privileging only one kind of intelligence. Fire is the intelligence of the life force and of movement. Fire is the intelligence of the athlete and the dancer, of somebody who can do these prodigious, powerful things with their bodies, but also it has to do with inspiration and drive. And finally, Earth is the intelligence of the practical person who likes to do things with their hands. It's a very grounded, obviously, form of intelligence. And so the people who are craftsmen or, the people who love to cook and the people who garden, but also the people who manage money, for example, tend to have, a high earth intelligence. So these are the 4 elements. And then the 3 modes also come into it. So for example, in astrology, there are 3 fire signs: Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Aries is what we call cardinal fire. Cardinal is the energy of people who have initiative, who like to begin things and to have great ideas, right? They are the initiators. And then Leo, for example, is fixed fire. And fixed is the energy of people who like to finish what they start and who have a lot of focus, who can stay with a task long term. And Sagittarius is mutable fire, which is the energy of people who are able to flow with change, who do not resist change, but who actually embrace it. You can already see, right, when you think through your lens of looking at children, how, some children love to start things and don't like to finish them. And some children can stay at a task for hours without being interrupted because they're so into it. And other children are the ones who flow well with change, right? Who do well with transitions. We know this. Anybody who's, dealing with young children knows that some children flow well with transitions and some don't. So we already have some of this information, but astrology helps us understand it a little bit more, more consciously. And when, for example, there's a family that really privileges emotional intelligence, and they have a lot of water in their chart, but they have a child with, who has a lot of air or a lot of earth, they might not understand that child very well. They're like, why don't you talk about your feelings, right? Or vice versa. You can have a child who's very sensitive with tons of water energy, who needs to talk about their feelings and express their feelings in a family of people who are very earthy, for example, who don't really, they learn by doing. And, they go on like hiking vacations and, and so it just opens up this array of diversity that we don't need to judge or ever pathologize.
Oh, this is so fascinating. I'm already, I'm thinking of my family of origin, then I'm thinking of my husband and my children. I'm thinking of all the families that I work with, and, what power to understand ourselves more deeply and then to look at our children this way and to be able to come from this place of having so much more knowledge, and knowledge is power. So, incredible.
Yeah, and hopefully, compassion and openness and just like removing judgment. I repeat this to my clients all the time. I love astrology because it removes judgment. It gives you full permission to be who you are. So here's another example. Suppose a child has a very, very strong Mars and Aries energy, the energy of the warrior. And I'm a pacifist, myself. But when a child has that energy, they need to express it somehow, and they're going to express it physically. So if somebody has a very strong warrior energy, they could choose to become, a policeman. They could choose to become a gangster. They can choose to become a black belt in karate. They can choose to become a spiritual warrior. Those are all of their options, right? They can choose. In the form of astrology that I practice, free will is the highest force. So I will talk more. I will come back around to the idea of destiny later. But, even within our destiny, we have choice of how we react. So if you have a child who really is always on the move and cannot be, constrained and is very daring, what can you do? You can enroll them in martial arts. They're going to be a warrior no matter what. But if actually they have the guidance of somebody who teaches them discipline and self-control, as well as, give them an outlet for their physical energies, then, what could be better, right? So this is one example of how parents can really think about guiding their children. I also sometimes give the example of a father who came to see me for therapy. I mentioned this one to you and said, "Can you please make my daughter less dramatic? I just need you to fix her,
right.
Make her not dramatic." And when I looked at this young lady's chart, she was like 8 years old. And I saw that she had the moon in Scorpio. And Scorpio is fixed water. It's the most intense of the emotional signs. And this child, no matter what happened, she was going to feel everything so deeply and so profoundly. So I had a meeting with the father and I said, "Excuse me, I am sorry. I cannot do what you ask. This is impossible. But what you can do is that you can enroll her in acting classes and give her an outlet of expression for her intense emotion so that she doesn't have to do that at home in the shape of tantrums, but that she can actually put all that energy somewhere." It's really often about channeling the energy in the right direction, right?
As I work with families, it's always this concept of, we can't change who this person is, and we wouldn't want to. Sometimes we're in conflict because of our needs, but when we can look at, making sure we're taking care of our needs so that we have what it takes to then deal with these children, and then we can have the tools like this to understand them better, then it opens up our creativity to say, okay, how can I support? And, with my own children, I'm thinking of things that we did in terms of rowing or rock climbing or swimming or archery or, all the different things that can help be healthy, creative outlets for these children in all of their different modalities. I just love this.
I agree. I think that, one of the first things that parents discover when they enter parenthood is that children are not blank slates. And this is why astrology can be helpful too, right? They come in with their own personality fully formed, and we notice from the very, very beginning. Because, for example, the school system is so biased toward air people, that air energy of mental, logical, language intelligence, and even mathematical intelligence. And because it has dropped so much of arts and sports and music and these other elements, it is, that's why you and I are talking about these things, right? What kinds of other settings can really empower children to be themselves and to develop themselves. Unfortunately, I'm just thinking about the level of privilege that it takes, right? Unfortunately, it really takes all this extra work, to go outside of the usual channels that are available. But I think it is empowering for everyone to know these things, right? And to know, what kinds, if children learn by doing, then have them do things right along with you. Right?
There are so many
cook
ways
with you, have them do life skills with you.
Right. I was going to say there's so many ways of meeting these needs without, extracurricular types of things. Nature, just in nature,
exactly.
We're going to find pretty much everything a child needs to come up against, whatever it is they're working with. And like you said, just having children do things with you, which is something that's always hard for parents, because especially busy working parents these days, we want to get things done and everything takes time. when we do it with our children. And I'm constantly, reminding mamas to just, we want to simplify. We want to try to slow down so that we can honor and really see and hear who this child is, and then give them these gifts of time and activity and space to be able to unfold in the ways that's already their destiny. So, you've talked about free will and destiny, and also that even though this astrological chart may be fixed, there's so many different ways of looking at it. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, look, it's a mystery why astrology works, right? An astrological chart, which I refer to as a map, is only a symbol. And it's actually a very simplified view of the solar system from the perspective of the Earth. So it has like all the planets and the sun and the moon from our perspective in a certain position. We don't know why there's a mirroring between the sky and the Earth, right? Between above and below. I mean, this is the age-old idea of as above, so below that was carried on with astrology from its very beginnings, in Western astrology at least. But the point is that when at the moment of birth, and this is a picture of the sky at the moment of birth, some kind of energy gets fixed or comes through, like you say. It's like if the world is full of radio waves, this is the channel in the radio through which you listen. This is the filter through which you experience everything. And we can see it astrologically. Now, the planets move, right? And we know the rate of their movement. So one other way astrology is useful is that we can see the timing of these developments. It takes Jupiter 12 years to go around a chart. And every time it goes around the chart, it touches all these sensitive points. So although the planets in your chart are like your sensitive points, and it touches all of them, and it gives you a lesson each time that happens. And so we can actually look at the cycles of all the planets, and that's how we time events. And also this is how we can understand there's a basic idea about human development in astrology that includes that everybody goes through. So every 12 years, we have a Jupiter return. And so there's these cycles of 12 years. Every 29 to 30 years, we have a Saturn return. And that, for example, the Saturn return breaks life up into these neat thirds, more or less, right? We're not all going to live the same amount of time. But, there's certain tasks developmentally that need to happen before age 30 and that get consolidated at age 30. And then there's a whole other set of tasks that are consolidated between 30 and 60. And then after that. So we actually can learn a lot about human development by using astrology, and there is change. But that basic blueprint, that map that I refer to, or it's like the acorn to the oak tree, right? This is your acorn, and you're going to become a beautiful large oak tree, and we don't know exactly what shape it's going to take, but this kind of acorn produces this kind of oak.
Right.
Right?
And then we also have the sunlight and the earth that the acorn is in, and the amount of water or not. And so, those are the things that we as parents can help facilitate, but ultimately that acorn is the acorn.
Exactly. And this is really important that you mention that, because there's a lot of stuff that astrology cannot do. Astrology cannot tell you if a child is going to be gay, for example. Astrology cannot tell you if somebody's going to be rich or not. It can tell you something about their ease of their relationship with the resources. It can tell you something about their kind of masculine, feminine energies. But there is a lot that is not included in that, in that chart. Now, the chart is like a map to the territory, which is your life. And so in that sense, it's helpful. If you're navigating California, it helps to have a map that tells you where's the coast, where's the mountains, where's north, where's south. That's all it is, right? I mean, the map of California is just a piece of paper, and it doesn't have any redwood trees or bears on it, but it's a useful piece of paper. And that's, more or less what this process is. We're reading a map, but the actual territory is what you make it, and it has to do with your life and all these other elements. How much nurturing you get. How fertile is the soil where you land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking about that before, and all of the things that happen that we can't prevent or prepare for along the way. And a lot of that is the trauma that can happen, as well as the joyful experiences, the nurturing, and that then, of course, is part of it. And so you're working with individuals to help them heal from some of the things as well. And so having this basic map or blueprint, and then also understanding the things that have happened along the way, you can work. So I love this blending.
They're both important, yes.
Right, the therapy and the astrological reading. You also talked about, that the child will be of an age where the parent can share the reading with them. And this was something that I had asked you in an earlier conversation about, at what age does an individual really be able to grasp this? And, I see a lot of times we're sharing a lot of information with very young children, and this is something that you would wait till a certain age, or, that a young adult could come to you for their own reading. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I love that question. The youngest person who has sought my astrological help has been 14 or 15. And I think that's a great age, because it's an age where a lot more awareness has come in, and also more capacity for abstract thought. I would never deny astrological knowledge to anyone, though. And I think one fun thing can be, for parents to do with young children, is to introduce them to the archetypes of their astrology. There's beautiful symbols and symbols from nature. I mean, I have right here. Oh, here. Our listeners can't see this.
Right.
But, there's so many beautiful representations of the seasons and the year, and the images of the planets and the astrological signs that children can engage with. So, for example, my daughter is about to turn 5, but she knows how to sing the names of the planets in order, of the planets in the solar system in order.
Right. So there's all these,
I taught her the song, Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of these developmentally appropriate things that we can do with our children, and, we can have the reading that is for us, but then we can introduce. I remember right around the age of 10 or 11 being fascinated with the symbols and the artistry. So, seeing the signs of the zodiac and wanting to know what I was, and this beautiful, very modern coloring book that I could work in. And so the chart that you just showed was this beautiful, colorful chart of the
wheel.
Yeah.
Like a mandala.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, we can also introduce them to the sky, to the phenomena in the sky, right? Already, we took our daughter to see the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter that was visible with the naked eye on the winter solstice.
Uh-huh.
And even just observing the cycle of the moon, all of these things are really useful, right? And any time that we can be outside in a dark sky, or whenever people can be in the wild and not have too much electricity around, the sky acquires this other level of brightness. And this is how astrology began, just by observing, in a time before electricity. Just imagine, right, how bright the celestial bodies were, and people just observing, how there's the time of the year when the days get long, and the time of the year when the days get short, and all of the interplay between moon, stars, sun.
And we've become so disconnected from this, and yet it's such an essential part of who we are. So I love thinking about all of this, and, we're fortunate here in Montana to have just these amazing night skies, and I'm finding myself drawn in so much more. And so, really working with my children and my grandchildren now, and helping them to understand that. So I'm sure that, our listeners are getting all kinds of ideas. So I want to make sure that you've covered, as we kind of wind down here, covered the key points that you would like to share. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to bring in?
Well, this last part of the conversation reminded me of something that I can mention now. So in astrology, we're not just our sun sign. We are much more than that. Our sun, just like in the solar system, the sun is the main organizing principle, whose gravity keeps everything flowing in order. That is who we think we are. But from the perspective of the Earth, the moon is equally as large as the sun. That's why we can have eclipses, right? So the moon is our unconscious, more instinctual personality. And we are as much our sun as we are our moon. So when you ask, where will our children need us most? How can we support them best? It is very important to get familiar with a child's moon sign, because this is the key to their self-care. And see, so the picture gets, more complex and fast, but it's really worth finding out about that, depending on where somebody's moon sign is. For example, if somebody has their moon in Cancer, they really are going to gravitate to things like food and nurturing and coziness and home when they need to be recharged. But if somebody has their moon in Sagittarius, they're going to want to travel and go on adventures. If somebody has their moon in Capricorn, they're going to really enjoy hard work. And sometimes they don't know how to relax unless they're doing something with their hands, right? So these are all part of that map of clarifying what we all need to thrive.
This is making such sense to me, and I'm thinking, why didn't I have this done when I was younger? My children were younger. But anyhow, for our listeners now, they know they can utilize these tools. So Magali, this has just been fascinating. And of course, we're going to want to find out how we can get a hold of you and how we can learn more. Sure.
You can find me at www.magalimorales.com. Magali is Magali, Morales, Morales. That's my website. You can get through my blog through there. You can book a free consultation on the phone if you want there. There's a lot more information there, and my phone number is there as well. That you can reach me that way. So I am at your service. Let me know. I would be delighted to share this with more people.
Well, I just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing and the insights that you are bringing to parents and families everywhere. And so thank you so very much for being with us here today. All of that information will be in our show notes as well. So if you didn't get that down, you can check the show notes out. So just what a realm of information. And for me, it's bringing in so much insight, just hearing you explain this and all of these aha moments I've had throughout this conversation. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here with us, and just all the best to you. And to our listeners, take care. Until next time, be well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeetfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes, and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.